And welcome to the Go Earn It podcast. I'm your host, Shane Sparks. Fired up again. This is a guy that I absolutely love. He is a must follow on social media. He's a three-time All-American, national champion at Iowa, 2008 Olympian, and he's the head coach at the University of Northern Iowa. Welcome in Doug Schwab. Doug, it is fantastic to see you. How are you today?
I'm doing well, man. Appreciate you having me on. I appreciate the energy too,
I got to have some energy, Doug, but you're my kind of guy. And I'm going to tell everybody now, and then we'll talk about it later on. I love to listen to Doug Schwab, a ton of wisdom. Follow him on Twitter at Schwab Wrestling, Schwab, SCHWAB, at Schwab Wrestling. I'm there every day. Doug Schwab fires me up. I don't even wrestle for him, but he fires me up, and I'll drop this one real quick. My favorite Doug Schwab quote is, be the MFer that sets the pace today. Doug, first question for you. Yeah. What's your favorite quote? Because I love that one.
I can't. I got to bleep them out.
What is it? What's your favorite quote?
I don't know. You'd have to ask my guys. I mean, there's probably a lot of things that I say, and sometimes they'll say them back to me. But I don't know about wisdom. I've been around a lot of really good people, and then you start to pick up things from those people, and then through your experience and time, you want to share that. I think knowledge is useless unless you share it. What am I going to, I'm going to hold on to it, and then I'm going to wait till, my time's done. And you're like, I think for me, coaching is, it's trying to impact people. It's trying to get them to see some things in themselves that maybe they wouldn't have seen, and get them to go places that they didn't think they could go. I don't know. I always enjoy talking with a team before, and, we're talking about wrestling, but we're usually always talking about life. I think anything that you take from it, you could relay that, and you can use it when they leave here too. You know what I'm saying? I want them to have something way beyond the wrestling skills that they learn. And that's really what we're trying to teach them every day. We want to win on the wrestling mat, absolutely. But, most of these guys, they're going to have another, and I told them yesterday, you're going to have another 60, 70, years, that you're going to lead the way, or lead your family, or lead your business, or lead your you're going to be, and whatever you're going to be in, you got to be willing to lead the way and step out there and have some courage. And I don't know what my favorite, I'd have to think about it a little bit. I get on themes, and I've been a lot of themes this year's, and then, kind of, planting those seeds, man. And then how do you get that thing to sprout, and how do you get that thing to bear fruit? And, that's really what our guys are working on. And that's not always a timely thing. I think that's probably the biggest thing with wrestling's really hard. And you're watching it in Division I right now in the depth, and, it's just not a straight path to being great. And, you get a lot of distractions, you get things that come in, we were just talking about, drinking a little bit, and you can get derailed really quick. Especially you get away from home, and there's just so many things that can get in the way of you trying to be great. And, hopefully you have some really good people around you. And I think that's really what we have right now. We have a lot of people that are, they're pushing the same direction. They're going after the same things. And, when you have that, I think you move faster and farther together. And I'm really excited about the group of individuals that we have right now, and the team that we have, and how we're moving forward. And that's, to me, that's what coaching is. It's not that, hey, I tell you once and you get it. It's like, okay, we got to keep renewing. And, like I said, I'm trying to plant these seeds in these guys too,
Yeah.
And then, hopefully as they go, they're going to bear fruit. And, we want them to bear fruit, on the wrestling mat, but it might be in something else, and it might be way down the line too. I think that's, that can be a really hard lesson for guys to learn, though, is that, it's not on their time. So, some of the things that I'm saying right now, those are probably some of my favorite things that I tell our guys and consistently say them. And then I try to find other ways to get them, there's all kinds of analogies to be able to use. And then you try to get them to understand it. And then you try to get them more than anything, how to live it and model it and put it into action.
Good stuff. Want to take you back, Doug, to when you were an athlete, based on what we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. When you were wrestling at Iowa, what was the biggest threat to your excellence at that time?
That's a good question. Oh man. I didn't drink, I had good people around me. That also didn't. I was so focused on what I wanted to go after. I think, with anything, it's just things outside of your control that you let get in the way. I didn't grow up with the social media like some of these guys do now. You can get bought into that really quick. You can get bought into the good and the bad. Prosperity can be the thing that guys really struggle with. I don't know if adversity as much as prosperity. So I think, the biggest thing was controlling what you can control. I think you get a girlfriend, all of a sudden something happens and then you think it's the end of the world and you let all these emotions get in the way of what you're going after. I mean, we can find any kind of excuse and reason to turn the other way. I think, I would say probably that, just getting to understand controlling what I can and doing it as well as I possibly can. And, not getting distracted by some of the outside. I can definitely see how some of these guys, I mean, on the phone, heck, we didn't have that. And I'm actually really glad we didn't have that. It just the outside, I'm fortunate that drinking wasn't important to me. Some things going out wasn't important to me, that those things just, they weren't as important. But I would say that, now looking at today's age, it would be some of that comparison, worrying about these things and just, hey man, I'm just going to continue to move forward and believe what I believe in. And I'm gonna get, if it's one or two people around me, they're willing to go that, and it might only be me sometimes.
Sure. When you think about your high school career, Doug, how would you describe your high school career?
Oh, gosh dang. Well, heartache.
Okay. Because you were a
Heartache is,
three-time finalist?
yeah, so my freshman year, I lost my first match in my career. So I would say that heartache was a little piece of it, but also like just persistence too. I mean, trusting and believing in the process. And heck, I lost my first match, and my brother, I had some big shoes to fill. My brother, one of my brothers was a state champ. My brother Mark was a 4-time state champ. He lost one match in his career, and I lost one of my first matches ever in my wrestling career. And it actually, I remember one of the dads came up to me. He's like, "Hey, the pressure's off." And for me, it was like, I had some separation between my brothers, but I think, heartache losing as a freshman. Then I got hurt as a sophomore. I got reversed late in my junior year in the finals. But I'd say, heartache those years, but then the persistence to overcome that, and then, stand at the top of the mountain. That's still one of the best feelings that I had, was winning state that my senior year. I mean, it was still one of the best feelings that I've had as a competitor. And it was just more that I trusted and believed in myself and the people around me, and that I knew it wasn't coming exactly when I wanted to, but it was going to happen. And then if it didn't happen, I'm going to keep knocking. And I think that was probably the one of the greatest lessons that I learned. And then I did the same thing. I did the same thing in college, because I wasn't, a hugely heralded recruit coming out. I wouldn't have had 5 stars by my name by any means. But I certainly had a lot of a gritty, tough, stick with. And I think guys could see that I was getting better in my wrestling. I still hadn't wrestled a ton, because I had a couple summers off because of the shoulder injuries. But heartache but then at the end, like, man, just perseverance, is probably my biggest thing. Yeah.
How'd you end up at Iowa?
Gable.
What do you remember from meeting him the first time?
That's crazy. So my brother Mark, was he was the best recruit coming out. He's multi-time junior national champ. One of the best high school wrestlers ever. I met Gable the first time when he came to my house to recruit my brother. And the crazy story about that is, Gable pulls up, and my brother's in the car with Don Briggs, and he leaves. And Gable still comes in and talks with us and all this stuff. And this is wild, because Gable asked me. I was sitting at the table with my mom, my dad, and my brother's not there, which is crazy because he left. He went with Briggs, and Gable's obviously, he's not very happy about that. But I remember him asking me, he's like, "Hey, you gonna still love your brother when he goes somewhere else and he doesn't win?" So basically saying, if you don't go to Iowa, you're not going to win. And it was like, and as a kid, I didn't really realize it. And then when he came back 11 years later and sat in that same kitchen with me and my mom and dad, I remember my mom was like, "Hey, you remember that?" And he's like, "Yeah, I remember that." And he goes, "I was pretty upset." I thought that it was the best fit. He's one of the best guys. The things that we could have helped him do. And I thought he was making a mistake at the time, and, he came in though, and I knew where I wanted to go. I mean, even though my brother was up at Minnesota, and, they were really starting to come along. But man, I went to visit Minnesota. I went to visit Iowa. And, one thing I'll tell kids, and, I went on 2 visits, and I remember, I got a few calls from a couple other places, and I remember my brother asked me, he's like, "Hey, would you really consider going there?" And I'm like, "No." He's like, "Well, then don't waste their time." He's like, if you already got it narrowed down and you know where you want to go, or at least have an idea where you want to go. And I really did, it was one of those 2 places. And, you think about who I had around me. You mentioned Ironside, you had both Brands brothers, you had McRae, you had Zadok, you had, Mena and McGinnis. And heck, I think Aiken was around at that time. And I mean, so, look at that. Look at the competition that you had in the room. Look at the guys that you were going to be able to be around. And that's what I wanted to be around. I went on a visit, and it was, I was sold. Heck, I'll tell you another story about Gable sitting there kind of like, he's like, here's what we have left for scholarship. I remember he said this, he's like, is this going to be he kind of told me what, and I'm not going to say numbers, but is this going to be enough? And I was like, I don't care. Honestly, I know where I want to come, and sometimes maybe that's not being a very good businessman on my part, but I could care less about being a businessman. I want to be around the people I want to be around. And that was way more important to me than a dollar. That stuff can be, I can get that back, but I can't get back this time, and I can't get back these experiences. I can't get back this time around these people. So I know that was a very long-winded answer how I got
Great
to
stuff.
Iowa, but it was really easy when I saw how they competed. I'm from the state of Iowa. I grew up around them, even though my brothers went to UNI. There was enough separation where it's like, yeah, that's where I want to go. And, I'll say this about my brother. He could have made it really hard for me to go to Minnesota. He could have probably really pushed and leaned on me really hard to go there. And I probably would have, but he didn't do that at all. And I mean, I'm so grateful that he didn't put that on me. He was like, you know what? Hey, I'm going to look at things objectively. I'd love to have you. And I think if they would have been a couple years farther down the line, when they're in their program, I think he probably would have pushed hard for it because of, you saw where they got to as a program.
Yep.
And they were working to get there, and Iowa was already there. So, it made a lot of sense. And I got a year under Gable. I wish I would have got more. But I got that time around him, and, I guess the rest is history.
You mentioned some great teammates. Going to put you on the spot here a little bit, but I'm curious because I love this question. You are around some of the all-time greats. For whatever reason, maybe not even on the wrestling mat, who was the most impactful teammate you had?
Wow, that's a great question. Whew. Ironside helped me a ton. I just think having that older guy that brings you along. But that's really what all those guys did, though. It wasn't like he was the only one. He was very impactful. Heck, I think of a guy like remember the name Josh Budke. He helped me a ton. He was a guy that was really good on top, and man, he was a year younger than me, and I'd grab him all the time and be like, "Hey, I need you to get on top of me. I need you to help me." And he would work and work and work with me, and he'd never say no. Strip Matter was a guy too that just being a teammate, being real selfless. You pick different things from guys. A guy like TJ Williams, who came in, and I remember that first year when he came in from JUCO, like there was a look in this guy's eye, and you're like, this guy's going after something, and you could even recognize that in that, and you try to stay with those guys. But I'd say Ironside had a ton. He had a huge impact on me. Yeah, I mean, Tom and Terry both had big impacts on me just from hand fighting, being able to stay in the fight. I mean, and you had to learn how to fight in that room. You had to learn how to hand fight. If you didn't, you were going to get run out of there. And you had to embrace that, and you had to be willing to come back for more. And you had to know that you were going to, and I say, get my dick kicked in the dirt. That's what happens. It's a college wrestling room. It's a high level college wrestling room. And they're gonna lean on you, and they're gonna breathe on you real hard, but they're also gonna bring you around, especially when you're willing to stay in the fight and work. And I don't know. I believed in the people I was around. I mean, wholeheartedly. I can't tell you that. I think that's probably one of the biggest things for these kids, whatever program they're going into. Um, you have to trust and believe in the people that you're going to be around. You got to be willing to jump, because if you're going to kind of dip your toe in, I don't think you can get the most out of it. And that was probably the biggest thing for me. I was like, man, my eyes were wide open, and I was just like, heck, you tell me to do something, I'm going to do it. And that's really what I did from day one when I stepped down there.
You mentioned your high school career had good success. You go to Iowa, a lot of
Mhm.
success. So you've done it as an athlete. Now, obviously, you can look at it from the coaching lens. You got a couple of kids that are like high school age.
Yeah.
What do you think, Doug? And I know every situation's different, but if you want to wrestle in college and you are a high school kid right now, what should you be focused on based on your experience? How would you answer that?
Get better, improve, love the sport, like not be overly concerned with, no, I mean, you want to win, and I want to see that guy shows progress, but I mean, we've seen plenty of guys that, and this is happening a little bit right now, where guys almost avoid certain competition. They want to keep this ranking, and they're so concerned about that. And it's like, I don't even care, dude, because if we're ever going to avoid competition, you're not going to be able to avoid it in college. Like, you have to embrace that. And I was listening to coaches kind of just talking about chasing losses. Like, you have to be willing to do that and put that on the line, and know that it's about improvement. It's your self-worth isn't based on those type of things. I think I'm more concerned about guys showing improvement. So I can tell you the things that I look for. I look for guys being coachable. They have to be able to take direction. You're talking about some of these kids are like, oh, I got to figure it out. Like, well, you might have some things figured out, but where you're trying to go, you need a little guidance, and you got to be willing to take that. You got to be humble enough to be able to take the direction and be able to use it. You got to be gritty, because you got to stick to your long-term vision and goals, because it's really hard. It's really, 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 really damn hard. And then, for me, we talk about, are we going to give back more than we get? Are we only going to be about us? And then, are you always going to point the finger here? Because I have control that. So those are things that I'm really looking for. So if kids want to go after something, and I know everyone's like, well, I didn't win multi-time state champions, I didn't do this. We were talking about, hey, I would want to wrestle for you, and I'd be a third or fourth string guy. Well, who knows? That could turn into the first string guy in a hurry, because of the work that you're willing to do, how much you believe in what's going on, and the ground you're going to cover. But you still have a role, and you have a huge, important impact on the team and the people you're going to be around. You asked about some of the guys that had an impact on me. I mean, I mentioned a guy that didn't score a point at the national tournament. So that's not 100% all that it's about. It's you can have a huge impact on the people you're around and not be the headliner, so to speak, but I think that's where you got to be able to know that you have a value. And I try to make sure kids understand that whatever they're going to add value to the team, they're going to add value to the program, they're going to add value to the people that are going to be around, and they're going to go take that out into the world with them. So I know I get long-winded, Shane.
Doug, if I could, I'm telling you this. If somebody said to me right now, can you talk wrestling? Can you talk life with Doug Schwab for 24 hours? I'd put my right arm on it. It wouldn't be a problem. I love this stuff. A lot of wisdom here. I love this stuff, because one thing I love about listening to you, Doug, is this stuff. It's not about the wrestling. Yeah, it's about the wrestling, but it's about big picture stuff. Like you said before, when people make college decisions and where they're going to go, it's not a 4 or 5 year play. You got to be thinking, how is this going to impact me for 60 years? That's the play. It's a 60-year play. It's not a 5 or 6 year play. No way. So I'm with you.
That's what.
Go ahead.
That's what I'm trying to think too. Even when I'm trying to relate to these guys, and then I have to model and live it too. Though it's really easy to say those things, and then if you don't celebrate those other little victories and the things we talk about, then you're just about the wins and losses, and we're trying to get them to develop habits that they can take with them the rest of their lives. And and believe in these guys. I mean, that's it's one thing I try not to, guys can feel it. I think they can feel that this is real. The coach really actually believes in me. He really cares about me. He cares about me as a person, and and he believes that I can do this. And no matter what, they're going to have one person that believes in them. And I think that's part of the role as a coach.
You've been around this for so long, Doug, in so many different capacities. Have you always had that perspective, or when did it shift? Or was it always, because I mean, I think in this sport, sometimes it's like, hey, I only beat the number 2 guy by 12. And it's just kind of like, I'll be honest with you, that stuff drives me nuts because I'm all about hard work and intensity. But you said something before, celebrate find a reason to celebrate stuff. It's okay to beat a guy by 9, give a max effort, and actually like, hey, I'm happy with the way it performed. Like it's okay to admit like you're happy with the way you performed. You come from Iowa. The perception, right or wrong, over decades has been like, maybe we pound our heads into the wall and we get tougher and so forth and so on. So that's why I ask you that. Has that perspective shifted for you, or have you always kind of been like that?
Nah, no, not at all. I mean, it's definitely shifted. I just, you look at it, you have to celebrate some of these small victories. I'm not saying we're going crazy overboard, but like sometimes got to feel some progress too. It's like, and I'm all for, I beat the guy by 8. I should have beat him by 12. I mean, I'm all for like, hey, we want to maximize and we want to get more out of things. But man, if you're never, and maybe that was kind of that never satisfied, I mean, that's a little bit of Gable we talked about, but I don't think you enjoying a victory or feeling good about something, I don't think that's going to back you off, what you're going to go after. I think you got to find that balance. I think that's a little bit like, I remember what Metcalf said, I'm not going to celebrate because I don't want him to think me think it's a big deal that I beat him, type of thing. And no, I've definitely gotten to where, and I don't say crazy celebrate. I still don't probably do a great job of it, but I definitely acknowledge, when guys do the things that we ask them to do and they do them well. And that doesn't always mean that they're going to win, but it just means they're bought into the bigger picture of what we're trying to do and what it means to be part of this team. And, for me too, just acknowledging when other people do things well. I don't think in the sport, sometimes we do that well. We don't want to acknowledge some of these other teams and doing things well, because then it's like, well, then it's taken away from us when I just don't see it that way. I think, man, if someone does a really good job, there's nothing wrong with telling them, hey, you did a great job, man. Great job with your team. You got a lot of these guys, like that. How does that take away from me? Like, this means, hey, I got to do better on my end. But, you asked something about kind of and I don't know if I was looking for what, I think the progress in the ground that you can cover. And when you stack days on top of each other and you stack days and start stacking days on top of days and weeks on top of weeks and months on top of months, the ground you can cover is immense. I think we get so caught up into the micro and the small, and, as a coach, I want to keep you in right now, but I'm always looking at the bigger picture. And so you kind of ask me what I'm looking for. I'm looking to see if a guy loves the sport and they're going to stick with it. Are they only bought into the wins and losses, or are they bought into something much bigger? And when that happens, I think that they have a love for it. They'll stick with it when it's hard. They understand that the real victories are something that doesn't always mean your hand gets raised. It means just sometimes it's just getting up in the morning, and fighting that battle. No, you get some good questions. I mean, the more I think about some of these questions too, I don't know if I would answer different, but I just try to be what comes right to my head.
Sure, absolutely. You're good. 1999, you win a national title. When your mind drifts back to that, and I know you're focused more now on the coaching aspect, but if you allow your mind to go back to 1999, you beat Michael Leitner in the finals. You beat the number 2 seed guy from Central Michigan. His name escapes me in the semifinals. Got to check on my notes here, Doug. Chris Marshall, Central Michigan. You beat him in overtime 10-8. What do you remember from that run in 99, and what, 20, 25 years after the fact, close to it, what do you appreciate more now when you reflect on that?
Winning the team title, that helped our team. We were still in a scrap. We had 3 guys in the finals. TJ was next, and then he won, and we took the lead from Minnesota. Then Full Heart, because I think they had Eggum coming up. They had Eggum, Full Heart, and Lesnar. But I think it was, for me, like it helped our team. It helped our team win the national title. You come down to those finals, and just I think that to me the growth from being a freshman, going 2-2 in the national tournament, and then winning it the next year. I saw I saw a steady growth and improvement. And, I think that's always an exciting place to be. And, I'd had plenty of people in front of me that had won, but I remember placing, and then my brother Mike at the time, it was kind of like, oh man, that's awesome you placed. I'm like, well, there's still work to do. I didn't come just to place, so you kind of going back and asking some of those things that I celebrated. And in certain moments, you almost didn't want to, because you didn't want to let that edge off, and I think, can you celebrate things and not let your edge off? And I think that's kind of what I always like. Well, we don't want to almost celebrate, because then we're almost letting our edge, instead of, I think you can enjoy things and you don't necessarily lose your edge. Like, it's just like, hey man, I'm enjoying this moment. That's something I worked so damn hard for. Why can't I smile about it? I've earned that now. Now that's not going to carry on and on, but no, I remember it sealing it for a team title. I remember, being out at Penn State, and actually I roomed by myself that year, which was kind of crazy. There's little things that you remember. We went out for the All-Star duel this year, and when you go back there, you just kind of, you get back into time, and I could tell you this, I won one as a sophomore. After I won as a sophomore, it's like, well, I'm winning two more, so I never won another one. And, so that probably even puts it in even probably even I don't know, I want to say built up. It's like, as proud as I am as winning that title, I was probably more happy that, I helped our team win the title, and heck, the next year come back and get third. And we win it again. Those are probably some of the best memories, because I know I helped add to the team, and I helped the whole group win, and when we get a ring and we win a title, it was the whole team. It wasn't just the 10 guys that went out there.
One thing, Doug, when I do research on some of you guys, I find myself becoming more impressed with guys that are number one seeds. Ironside, for example, number one seed, gets beats in the semis, comes back and takes third. You're the number one seed. You get beat in the quarters your junior year. You come back and take third. I think there is so much honor in taking third place. Number one seed. I mean, how did you do it?
Well, we still had a team title on the line, and for me, there's a lot of pride. I mean, I'm not just representing myself. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm representing the university. I'm representing the team, everyone that came before me, and my family. I mean, there's certain ways I've been raised. So if I tuck my tail now, that's exactly opposite of how I was raised. And my mom and dad were going to hug and love me no matter what, but they're going to applaud that I was able to rebound. And actually, I remember getting beaten. Actually, Strip Matter got beat that morning, and I remember us walking out to the van. Yeah, because we're in St. Louis. I remember walking out to the van, and we're kind of there, and I could see we're kind of both like, kind of almost want to feel sorry for ourselves. And I remember as we walked out there and kind of both kind of looking at each other, talking, it's like, well, our job right now is to come back and get third. we gotta put all that aside. And I kind of remember I didn't even cry. I put it all aside, and I'm like, I'm coming back and get third. And I won the first match, and then got bonus points, and then heck, I got a pin. And then, won a tough match against a guy that beat me early in the year, and then actually got another bonus points in the next match and scored almost as many points as I could on the backside for our team. And I remember I got third. I ran off, and that's when I started to cry. I remember going underneath the bleachers and bawling my eyes out. And then about 5 minutes later, Mike Zadek was wrestling for 7th and 8th, and went back out there and cheered him on. But, some of those things you got to delay a little bit, and you have to let it burn, and you have to, okay, when the tournament's actually done, then I'll let it go, because right now I got to hold on to it, because otherwise I don't know if I'm going to be able to get back on the rails. You know what I'm saying? So I remember kind of having that conscious decision of, I know how I'm going to come back. I know how I'm going to respond. This is how I've been raised, and then scoring as many points as I could for my team. And then I let it go, and man, I've let it go. I was,
I
bawling
just
my
think
eyes
those
out.
stories about taking third place are just, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, you find out what kind of manhood you have coming back and taking third. I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, because taking third hard, very hard.
Yep. And we had, we had 3 guys. So we had 3 1 seeds, Strip Matter, myself, and TJ, and we all got third. And, then Juergens won the title, and actually beat Sanderson in the finals, and we were in a scrap with Iowa State to win the title. So again, there's a lot of pride there, but also like, hey, I want to help our team do this. This is something bigger than me. So
next year you wrestle Leitner again, fall in the finals. What if you could have anything over in that match, or when you think about that tournament specifically, anything that stands out, or just a situation where it was just
just
a little bit better than
he made some good adjustments. In Leitner's a great wrestler.
Sure.
4-time All-American. That was the third time for him in the finals.
Yes.
So he did a real good job of keeping space. I didn't make any adjustments. And he made some adjustments. And there's probably some things I would have, you'd look back and you would have done a little bit different, but I think sometimes things play out as they're supposed to play out too, and you kind of got to trust that. But I just know that your last match in Carver Hawkeye to finish your career, it certainly wasn't thinking that I'm going to go out, in second place. I mean, I'd seen that my whole career. 3 or 4 years in advance what the makeup is, right, of when the tournament's going to be and where it's going to be, and it's like, oh, here I'm capping my career off here, and that's not how it happened. But certainly none of what I put into it. I mean, he was better than me that day, and he wrestled a great match and won a national title. And you know what? I mean, sometimes you just got to tip your cap to the other guy.
When you look at your career, Doug, from the start until the end, obviously made the Olympic team in 2008. What were your toughest times? Like, what were some days that were the toughest to overcome?
Oh man. Well, I made a team in 2007, but I'd been kind of, I'd been third, fourth, fifth, sixth in the ladder. I never really broke through. I'd been, I've been in the semis of the Open and, those type of things, but I hadn't really broke in. I'd won a few, I beat some guys and almost beat every guy, but I'd never beat them all in one day. I think when you start getting 5, 6 years in and you haven't broke through, and people around you are kind of like, what do you think? Maybe you should think about moving along, and then, the thing is, I made sure it was on my terms. If I wouldn't have ever broke through, it still would have been on my terms. It wasn't going to be because other people were telling me, well, I think it's about time. Like, no, I'll tell you when it's time. That's my choice. I'm not giving up on this dream. And I think, sometimes people give up on it because it's not immediate, or, your second or third year or fourth year. And then people, how it is. People will be like, what's he doing? Why is he still in there? Why is he still wrestling? Heck, he hasn't even broke through yet. He's never had a team. And it's like, well, I still believe in the people around. I'm gonna continue to coach. I still feel like I'm getting better, and I'm still gonna chase this damn thing. I'm gonna get up in the morning. I'm gonna chase it, and I'm gonna go to bed and sleep really well, and I'm gonna get back up and chase it again. And I don't think that's the thing that to me didn't change. Even though, you're, like I said, you're 5, 6 years in, and I can remember being a few places overseas, and you didn't have a good tournament, and you're just like, what in the hell are you doing? I mean, I remember being in Cuba, and actually Fullhart was my roommate, and I'd got beat, and I'm just sitting there kind of laying, and he's kind of, Fullhart, if you know Fullhart at all, Fullhart, he doesn't mince any words. He's very black or white, and it's like, dude, what the hell are you doing? You're gonna sit here and feel sorry for yourself? That's not gonna help. It's like, yeah, you're right, man. And sometimes you need those slaps in the face, right? And you have people that do that, but I think just sticking with, and then making a team, but then probably after I made the team in 7 and 8, probably making a little adjustment, and okay, I probably should have really evaluated, are you really going to go back after this thing, or are you going to kind of half-heart do it because this is what you've always done? That's probably the only thing I probably wasn't happy with myself was like, well, are you going to dip your toe in, or are you going to go into coaching, or you like figure out, because like you said, either we're doing it all the way or no way, and you can't half-ass do stuff. And I don't say I half-assed it, but it's like your heart has to be in it. There's no way that you could, it's too damn hard to do something half-hearted. You're going to get exposed in a hurry. But man, I learned a lot of lessons, and then you try to pass those lessons on to the guys that you're around as much as you can. But I never gave up on that dream, even though, they said I heard a lot of whispers,
Sure.
and inside, inside the part of me, the competitor in me is like, I'm going to give them double birds and be like, no, I'll make this decision. You're not making this decision for me. And I think that's, you need to have a little bit of that too, because if you're going to give up on those things easy, you're probably not going to get there anyway. And you probably weren't destined to get there because you were going to turn around when it got tough.
Yeah. I'm all over the place here, Doug, just like a wrestling match. I'm collar tied and I'm going to get switch levels. You got a mat return. You like I'm coming at you from all angles. Got to keep you off balance a little bit. My mat, I'm taking territory. You better be careful backing up a little bit. They're going to ding you. So going back to Gable a little bit, what's the biggest difference between Dan Gable as a coach and you as a coach? What's the biggest difference between you two?
Oh, shit.
I got some my underhook. I knew I would.
Gable's got about 8,000 titles underneath his belt. I think for him, I still liken it to Gable playing chess and playing checkers. I mean, that's what I feel like with a lot of guys. And I think he was just a step ahead. I could tell you that being around him, and I remember he would say some things to me, and I'm kind of like, when I was young, I'm like, what? I'm not sure what the hell he's talking about. And then you sat and you thought about it, and you're like, oh man, he just planted a seed. Like and that's what I'm really trying to work on, being able to do and adjust a little bit to the individual. But I think he had guys that they bought in and believed in what was going on. They jumped right away because of what was in front of them, right? I mean, you saw the evidence. It's not like he had to create any evidence. He's like, dude, look in the wall. Look at all these champs we got. We've certainly had some success and had that. I think we have to create, me as a coach, you got to continue to create more evidence, be as prepared as I possibly can, and just be as thorough as I can and clear as I can with our guys. And that's really what I'm trying to really work on being able to do, and feel like I'm probably doing a better job of that than I have. You're always trying to learn and improve and get better, but you can't compare. I mean, I try to use some things that he certainly did. And, I mean, heck, if you're not going to take some things, you're saying all this wisdom, like, where all your wisdom comes from the other people that you've been around, and then you package it maybe in a different way. But I just saw how detailed that he was and how much he knew as athletes. And that's what I'm trying to get to know my guys incredibly well. He knows them inside and out. And then he was a step ahead of them, and then he could figure out what button to push. And I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. I'm not there yet, not even close. So I don't know if I even want to be anywhere near the comparison of that, but I certainly have taken some things from him, and I do try to talk with him and ask him questions whenever I can, because I mean, holy cow, what better resource could you possibly have, in the sport or just in coaching in general?
What's the most impactful conversation you and him have ever had?
Oh man, we've had quite a few. That's a tough one. A few years ago, I took our whole staff down there, and we had a conversation, and guys were able to ask a whole lot of questions. There were just things that you took from him in, even when I took the job, there was a few conversations that we had, just some things that, hey, here's what you need. Here's some things that you need to look for. Here's some things that are important. Here's some things that you really got. And so those are some pieces that I've taken from him. Heck, even the last conversation, he always kind of, I think the thing I always took from him is you can never have too much information. You can't know your guys too well. You can't know things too well. Like, the better you know it, the better you can react to it, and the better you step ahead of it. I mean, I've had a whole mess of conversations with him throughout my time. I want to say maybe one that I really go back to is my freshman year. I was struggling a little bit, and I remember they brought me out there, and there were a few things that it was just Gable telling you. So it's like gospel, and that I know I just remember that helping me, even though I was struggling. It's like, well, man, this guy believes in me. And you know what? It didn't necessarily come to fruition that season, but it certainly planted some things for down the line, that it helped become.
You got a favorite corner story with Dan Gable?
Well, I was fortunate enough that, the year and a half, 2 years that he came back and coached with me and Tom, I would say probably that Iowa State meet, that first one, when heck, the first match, I think Perry had a scrap, and we're out in the middle of and then Morningstar ended up winning and beating Paulson the last match. But I just kind of remember him being out there and like, hey man, like I think he was telling Hartung, let's go to the back, let's go back here, and you're like, oh, shit, man, I guess Gable, I got your back, man. I don't know if I'll be able to take out Hartung, but I'm certainly will try. But that that was one of the times I remember just the energy and that he had, and like, man, that he hasn't lost it, man. That fire's still there. And then I was thinking about heck, that first year at Big Tens, and it was like 2 in the morning, and I can't remember what happened. How knew that he was just pacing the halls, because he's going through everything. He's already preparing and going through every possible scenario and things that he can do, and just I don't know, he just steps ahead. And that's the one thing I remember. He was so in tune and ingrained with the team that, yeah, there wasn't any stone uncovered with anything that he did. But that Iowa State meet, that first year, I do remember that. That was pretty funny.
Up to this point as a head coach, Doug, what's the best coaching job you have done in a specific match?
Oh man, hopefully that's still coming.
Sure. Up to this point, what would it be?
Oh man, it's a specific match. Well, then we're probably beating somebody that we weren't supposed to beat, right? I mean, whether that's what you do a good coaching job. I mean, you have some guys prepared for some things. Gosh dang, you're getting me to have to think and dig deep right here, man. Well, hopefully there's a couple coming this weekend. I'm not gonna lie. You got a couple of guys that are, I think you've hopefully prepared well and have a game plan, but the game plan is still, I think, has to be the things that you do really well. And game plans, I don't think have to be very, I think they're actually really simple. Dang, that's a good question. I mean, I think first match, I think about when Cologne beat Graf the first time. Some things that he did really well, just having guys prepared.
Was that in West Gym?
Yeah.
I was there, Doug. It's the only time I've ever been to West Gym, and it was one of the best dual meets I've ever been to. I mean, the energy in that place was insane. That's when I think Dylan Peters, did he pin Taylor?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
I mean, that dual meet I was sold on West Gym. I mean, that place was off the chain that night. It was a Saturday night. What I remember about that was Auburn beat Alabama in the Iron Bowl, I think, earlier that day. And it was like, I'll always remember that day.
So I'll tell you another crazy thing is, Parker, that was the first meet he was ever at. He was there because they were Askren. And I remember because it was like, so our facilities guy was like, hey, should we let anybody else in? Because it was packed,
It was packed. It was hot. It was packed. It was great.
And I remember they let them in, and they were right beside the mat. And then they kind of started letting, like, well, if someone went out, then they could come back in. But I was like, just let them in. Who cares? And that was kind of before they even started they weren't counting, because I don't think they were expecting that kind of walk up. And it was, man, that was an incredible environment, but just guys making adjustments, but then being able to beat a guy consistently, especially a high level guy. I think I'm still working on that, to be able to help guys make those adjustments in big situations. And I've got some great coaches around me that they do a lot of that work. I think about what Foster won a national title, but getting off the bottom with him was a struggle with, I don't know why I'm blanking on his dang name right now. Cornell, and then he went to but I'm getting old.
Sure.
But who he wrestled in finals, like, and then he did change over, tripod, boom, got out in short time, kept his riding time, then scored a takedown. And saying, just, I think in coaching, you got to make those small adjustments to guys and to make them simple, and then they got to go execute them. But I think the more trust that they have in you, and the more prepared you are, the better off that you can help them be able to execute to that level.
Specifically, Doug, what separates good from great?
well, consistency, consistency over time and a long time. And that I think you're bought into the process. I just, because it can't be 100%. I mean, there's results, there's feedback, but I, I think you can feel yourself getting better. I think that's the biggest thing is how long are you willing to stick with it without maybe seeing the the fruit that you want. Everyone wants to be the guy. Everyone wants to be the national champion. And, heck, there's 10 of those. There's 80 All-Americans. There's a value that you're adding, not to just the program, but to yourself through just sticking with things and trusting what's going on. And I see a lot of guys, they're just, I guess they're doing it because of what they think the payoff's going to be. Now, what if the payoff's 10 years from now? Are you still gonna go and you still gonna dig like you would the same? It's like, well, it's not gonna be here because it might not come in wrestling. You and I both know that. I mean, and what's the payoff really? It's only national champion? Is that the only payoff? Like, I just think of the habits that these guys learn, the resiliency and the trust that they have in themselves. Because, man, if these guys can really believe in themselves as a human being, as a person, I think you can do about anything. Now, doubts are still going to come, but and if you can do that on a wrestling mat at this level, I think you're going to be in really good shape to be able to do that in other things in life too.
As an athlete and as a coach, give me a match that taught you the most. As an athlete, a win, loss, or as a coach, win, loss. Couple examples of where you really learned a ton.
Holy cow. Yeah, good questions. Well, everyone always is like you lose more from a loss, or you learn more from a loss. But I think that the pain of a loss will make you change, right? Because, okay, well, this didn't work. Because if I'm still winning, like, well, I still won.
Sure.
And you don't necessarily always have to have a loss to, I think, to learn a lesson. But heck, man, even if I go back to I lost in the state finals my junior year, got reversed with maybe 15 seconds left. And then I had to have shoulder surgery that next week. Man, that was I think just being that close, having to go into that, and then knowing that, man, I had to sit and wait another year. Are you willing to do that? I mean, what are you going to put into this time? Because I could have easily felt sorry for myself. And at times I did, heck, sitting up and watching the year before even getting injured, sitting and watching our team at state tournament, so that sophomore year getting hurt and injured, and I was probably not very smart. I mean, I in overtraining's not, but I'm saying I didn't give myself rest. I just like, hey, no, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to grind myself into the ground. So you learn some lessons there. But those losses, getting hurt, and then come back the next year and then being that close, and then, okay, and then finally feeling that, and then understanding, okay, that I might have to wait till my senior year. I might have to wait. I'm not going to get it the first time, but I'm going to stick with it. So I think that taught me through high school, taught me in college how I'm going to stick with things. And then even beyond, and like I said, just how I was raised, that was all part of it. Winning. And I could tell you a match. I could tell you a match my sophomore year, and I was having a pretty decent sophomore year, but national duels, and I remember I beat Leitner at national duels, and I think I went 5-0 during those. And after that, I was like, okay, man, it's on. Because I'd lost. I got fourth at the Northern Open that year.
Up in Dallas?
Yeah, I'd lost a couple matches, and then, I just remember going to Midlands and being in a battle with Zadok and for the spot. And then I remember those duels, and after those duels, like I put a lot of work in. So there was a lot stacking up that, but I just felt as like, man, I'm going to beat everybody. I can beat anybody and everybody, and it's on. And I remember that match in particular, kind of like, oh man, I'm over the hump.
You got an example as a coach, a dual meet or a specific match that really taught you something, open up your eyes? to
Oh
something you
man.
didn't see?
uh, I think, for me, being excited and having bringing energy, but also keeping composure. As a coach, I know people like kind of looking at you like, well, this guy's a crazy all over the place, but I'm I'm still aware of the clock, the riding time, all those things. Like I think I would let the other factors kind of get in the way. I would let, the other coach and talking to them and worrying about that stuff. And now it's like okay, my only concern is my athlete. Now, sometimes I get on the ref and, heck, I learned a lesson the other week in the Nebraska duel, like we got to make sure that you're doing everything to help your team and not hurt your team in any way. So I'm still learning those lessons. I can tell when our team is very prepared, and I kind of always keep saying, well, I haven't learned it yet. Then I go back on those, and I probably should really sit down and think about some of those things. But I think about a few duels where we were really, really prepared and wrestled really well, and that stacked up well before, though. It wasn't just that week. They prepared really well that week, but there was a lot of things stacking up to that. So I think I'm seeing how can I make things kind of blend into one another, right? So we just continue to move forward as a team, and I think that's really what I'm learning. But I mean, we're progressing. I feel like right now as a team, as well as any team that I've had. We got a mix of old, with a guy like Parker, who's a great leader, and Happel, and Tyrell, who've been in the lineup quite a bit and had a ton of experience. And then we got guys like, Anderson and Downey and Volker and Farber, and some guys that haven't had a whole lot of experience, but they're all moving forward. And that's probably, to me, so much on them and the coaches and the time they're getting put in. But I think you're always trying to learn lessons. I have to really think back because, like I said, those losses. I mean, we've been really close with a lot of teams, and what's going to get us over the hump and winning those duels and those matches. And I'm trying to figure that one out still, Shane.
I know a lot about your wrestling. A lot of people, I mean, it's well documented. I mean, I listen to you all over different places. What's something, Doug, that most people don't know about you? Give us a random thing about Doug Schwab that most people don't know. Could be anything.
I don't have. I mean, I read quite a bit.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy reading. So I mean, maybe people, I think sometimes are like, wrestling coaches, they're not very smart, or I mean, kind of the jock type thing. But
you got like a favorite book? I mean, you got to, because I need to start reading. Like, really, I've been saying this for 10 years. I need to start. You got a book that stands out that you'd recommend?
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Holiday is one of my favorite authors. I mean, kind of get the stoicism too, and I talk about response a lot. I mean, that's what I think in life. You can't always control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond to things. And so a lot of those things. I mean, The Obstacles Away is a great book, but also just from learning, like, I mean, wrestling analogy, like it's not always going to be on your time. It's not always going to be easy. You're going to have a lot of things that get in the way of it. Are you gonna help that teach you and help lead you the way, or are you gonna be turned around by that? But he's got a whole mess of books that I like, and I read them over and over and over and over again, because the message is great. But Courage is Calling, probably my favorite one by him. But if you want to pick up a book, he's got some of the best books as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
You never be disappointed listening or reading some of his. But I do enjoy reading, and you try to learn as much as you possibly can from those. I mean, obviously, I like to spend time with my family and my kids, and I'm pretty simple guy, man.
You brought up your family a few times and the way that you were raised. Social media, Doug, is interesting because you know a lot about somebody's life because of social media.
Yep.
I remember following, your mom's battle with cancer. If you could talk to your mom for 5 minutes, what would you want to talk to her about?
Oh shit, man, you're gonna make me cry because I just I was actually just thinking about this the other day because, I think everyone always is like, you got to spend quality time. You got to spend quality time. Well, what's quality time? Quality time can be just being in the same room together. And that was one thing my mom she was great at. She was just being present, being there. So I don't even know if we'd have to say anything. It'd probably be like, hey man, I hope I'm making you proud,
Yeah.
and how I'm living and how I'm raising my family, and that, the things that you stood for, they're going to continue to be carried on. Your spirit's going to continue to be carried on. Your laugh, your joy for life, your joy for music, and dancing and being a little bit goofy and having fun, man. That those things are going to continue to be carried on. But I'd be more than happy just to sit in the same room with her, and she'd always kind of go through your hair, and that's man, if I could just put my head in her lap and have her do that, and we might not even have to say anything. I would probably I would be okay with that. I think that's always a great reminder that that you never get enough time with the people that you really love, and so take advantage of what you have, and when you have it, because everyone thinks they're going to have it for the rest of their life, right? We're young, and that's what I try to impress upon our guys all the time is like, make sure people know, don't ever take it for granted. Even, coming to a practice, even, when these guys get a chance to compete, man, don't ever take that for granted. Enjoy it and make the most of the opportunity that you get. But dang,
That's great. Good stuff.
yeah.
You got 2 more minutes?
Yep, absolutely.
All right. This is called Mat Returns, Doug. And
Okay.
I actually care about what people, because I don't want to look like an idiot or say stupid stuff. And I'll never forget it. I remember we were at a national tournament once. I went up to him, I go, Doug, am I overboard on the mat returns? And your response to me was, no, you're not. You might not be tough enough about the mat return. And I was like, I'm right. I'm okay on this. And it's not even about the mat returns. It's more of the mentality and so
Yep.
forth and so on. So I play this little game, little rapid fire thing. Mat
Yep.
returns. I'm going to ask you a question, rapid fire. You'll answer it. I'm going to bring you down again. It might take 6 or 7, but I can tell you right now, Doug, you're not getting away. And I am going to finish the on top because those are non-negotiables. All right.
My ass is getting away. I'm just telling you.
Who's your favorite music group?
Oh man, I've really been into Zach Bryan lately.
Okay.
Hendrix is one of my all-time favorites. Zeppelin from a group perspective. I'd probably go back to Hendrix, Chili Peppers, but right now I really like Zach Bryan and listen to some of the lyrics that he has. You're like, no man, I can get behind that.
How'd you become a Red Sox fan?
My older brother, Mike, huge fan, and started following him. And I remember '86. So I was a kid. I'm 9 years old, and I remember watching the ball roll through his legs, and yeah, I remember crying. And I didn't remember how much it hurt my brother. And then we started following him. We started going to games. We've been out to Fenway, and then my family's kind of got on board with it, and we go follow him and try to get to a game. But yeah, my older brother Mike, and I'll be probably a Red Sox fan the rest of my life.
Who's your favorite all-time Red Sox?
I love Pedroia. He's one of my, Ortiz is hard not to really like, Pedro from pitching perspective, but Pedroia just because he was a little dude who swung out of his shoes. And he freaking played hard and just gritty SOB. So yeah.
What is your biggest pet peeve?
You'd have to ask my wife. Probably light. You come home and the lights are on. All the lights are on. That's one of them. Or probably honestly, like when I can hear people eat, like oh man, like I struggle with that so bad. Like I almost just gotta get away. And it's like, I think it's almost maybe there's something wrong with me, but that's probably one of them.
If you could spend the day with somebody dead or alive that you've never met, who would you pick?
Oh man. Oh. At the time, I wasn't a huge Kobe Bryant fan, but man, watching him and hearing how he trained, and you just start seeing philosophy and seeing how he was moving on with his life, and he was going to be great at whatever he did. Like I probably wouldn't mind spending a day, a day with that dude, just because high level. I could go into wrestling terms too, but just thinking about him and how much I probably listen to the things that he does, he'd be up there for sure. Or from a coaching perspective, I mean, a guy like I think Saban's a great coach. I wouldn't mind getting around him and picking his brain for a day.
Yeah. Besides Gable, who's the best wrestling mind that you've ever spent time with?
Oh, man, I mean, my brother Mark's a pretty damn good coach. So if you're talking about coaching and then being able to relay it to athletes and then getting the most out of them, are you talking about a technique and skill? Because to me, there's differences in some of those things, and I think getting people to believe in themselves is a skill in itself. I've been fortunate to be around some really, really, really good coaches. My brother Mark is way up there. Terry Brands has always been one of the better coaches that I've been around. Yeah, I've been real fortunate to be around some guys, and like I said, because I'm thinking about, are you talking about from a skill perspective or like getting guys believing? Because to me, they kind of go hand in hand, but there's some differences in both those things. I've always heard Schultz was one of the greatest technicians in the world, and he could bring people together. That's a guy I wish I would have been able to be around a little bit because of how he was able to unite everybody.
Okay.
And
if you could switch spots with any person for one day, who would you want to be for a day?
I'm pretty comfortable in my own skin, and I don't know if I'd want to, because everyone thinks that being in this would be better because but I enjoy the life that I have. I think I'd like to see some things from other people's perspective once in a while. Maybe even my wife or my kids. To be able to see the perspective that they see things at, and then you could have a better understanding of them. And like, because unless you can, you try to empathize, but unless you're there, I think I'd like to be in their role just so I could see how I am,
Maybe along those same lines or piggybacking off of that, if there was one thing you could change about yourself, what would you change?
Oh man, I'd be on. My brother said I lost 5 minutes somewhere. Maybe it's more like 10 or 15. So I'd like to get those minutes back because I feel like I'm always running late or just being timely, just they make that decision, make it now. Like I trust him when I do, especially when I jump, like, okay, I'm going to swim, but I think it's for me in my head, just getting those minutes back and like just making a decision and moving with it and trusting whatever you're going to do. Cause I do, once I do it, just, like, I want to make sure it's the right choice. I want to make sure it's the right decision. Like, oh, it is the right decision. And I got, cause I'll make it the right decision. Right.
Sure,
you always don't have to have more information. Sometimes you just got to jump and go. So I got to take my own advice a little bit more.
What's the first job you ever had?
Paper route when I was young. I think that's a lot of kids had.
Yep.
Had a paper route, did a couple one of those, and that's really was one of my jobs. And then my mom was kind of like, especially when we got into high school, she was kind of like, hey, I'd prefer you not have to have a job. I want you to be able to put time into your training and wrestling. And I played baseball and other things, so she was kind of always like I know you want to, and I appreciate that you will, but I want to try to make it so you don't have to, which I thought was always pretty awesome. But yeah, that was one of my first jobs.
Final question for you. Who was the guy, Doug, that you just hated to wrestle?
Oh man. There's a couple of them. Well, actually Stadnik from Ukraine. That guy, him and Garzone was that dude was really, really good.
Was he from?
He's from Cuba.
Okay.
So I'm thinking more of the international, like, some guys made it hard on you and how they would keep space and those things. But I always looked at that as a challenge. But yeah, the couple of those guys were hard. Like Static was just, there was some matchup, and that was it was for one reason or another, that was not a good matchup. And man, you want to think you close the gap on guys and that you'd beat guys, you'd find a way in those in a 6-minute match. And he was tough. He's a guy like, man, I don't know if I draw somebody, I'm okay if it's not him.
What about in college?
I don't know if there's anyone I didn't enjoy. I mean, some guys could give you some fits, but I don't know. I always looked at those as a good thing, as a challenge.
Who was a guy, Doug, that just wrestled hard? Like, yeah, you maybe you beat him every time, but you knew when you towed the line against him, like, okay, I'm going to have to go to hell 2 or 3 times to get my arm raised with this guy because he's not going to quit fighting.
I don't know, because that was part of my thing. Is like, you're not going to outfight me.
Okay.
You
were that guy.
Yeah. I mean, that's not happening. That's not going to be part of the equation. I said Leitner made some really good adjustments. I think, think about a guy like Carl Perry, who I beat multiple times in a row. And then, it got closer and closer. So like they made adjustments. I didn't make adjustments. So, you got to give those guys credit and that they, you believe in what you do. But I mean, I think those guys, when they tighten things up, they were trying to think of had a few matches that were tight, especially as I got older with a few guys, and guys that kept space probably struggle. But I don't know. I love the guys that wanted to fight and wrestle. Like I didn't like the guys that wanted to run away and try to post and stay away from you. If a guy wanted to fight, like, perfect. Like, that's exactly what we want to do. Leitner would, but I look at where the adversaries is something important because it raises your level. And even guys that you don't enjoy wrestling, why don't you enjoy wrestling? It's probably because they're trying to put, the space that you don't want to wrestle from, or they're putting you in positions you don't really want to wrestle. So to me, it was a lot of feedback of, well, this is where I got to get better at, So I kind of looked at it in those terms. I don't know. I love guys that would come out and scrap hard. Please. I mean, to me, that's what it's all about.
Well, Doug, I'm at return you one final time. Period comes to a close.
I got away. No, I got away. I'm still ready for more. Shane, you're done.
Doug, I enjoyed this a ton. I really appreciate the time. You got a ton of wisdom. You got great perspective. Again, at Schwab Wrestling, SCHWAB, at Schwab Wrestling. You do a phenomenal job. And I'm going to tell you this, Doug, in my next life, I'm coming to you and I, because I want to wrestle for you. I think you do an awesome job. Just admire you. And
I appreciate that. I want to ask you about the Go Earn It. What is that?
It's a friend of mine that runs an apparel company, and he's the most positive guy that I know. His name is Brian Stout. He is the most positive guy that I know. So he wants to hear about people that have had to dig deep and go earn it and find, find different levels to go to. So I'm like, yeah, I want to do this. So that's why we call it the Go Earn It podcast. And you got to go earn it, because you said it before. Wrestling is hard. It's not easy. I mean, you got to go earn it. There is no easy way. No easy way.
Yeah. No. The obstacle's opportunity, right? I mean, so go earn it. Yeah, I like that. I just wanted to make sure that we send a shout out to those guys too, because I mean that I see that in the background, but it got a lot. I recognize the last name. So I mean, wrestling. So many wrestling people out in the world that want to support wrestlers, and I mean, they think they understand the value of what the sport did for them, and they want to continue to give back to it, and they want us to share our stories, because I think that's everything. We got to be able to share the stories, and then people get to understand there's personality and what's behind it, and I think that's what these other sports do really well. You think we were talking about the Olympics the other day, and that they build these storylines, and we have some, holy cow, man. I think about some of the individuals that we have within our sport. I mean, what better storylines, and what better examples, I think. And so I appreciate you sharing them, and hopefully people can take something away from this. Like I said, everything's stolen anyway. You know what I mean? It's just repackaged in a different way.
But everybody's got great stories. I mean, everybody's got, I could ask these exact same questions, and I got pages of them. I can ask the exact same questions to every single person I talk to. They're all different. I mean, I just love the stories, because, that story you talked about, I love the story again. from this conversation, there's going to be a few things when I go back and listen that'll get me fired up. But, you know, we'll deal with the emotion later after getting beat in the quarterfinals, coming back and taking third place. A story you and Strip Matter saying, hey, we got to come back. We're in a team scrap. Now it's about, you know, that name in front of the singlet, like our family, I mean, that stuff is so, and it's, hey, it all sounds good. It all sounds good. But when you got to dig deep down and do it, that's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah. Well, like I said, you get exposed all the time, man. You have these opportunities, and when you're out on the mat, it's just you and that other guy. So, I mean, it takes a lot of courage, and I think that's why we love the sport, because of those habits, those attributes, those things that we know that are going to carry them on, and beyond wrestling, that I think are so valuable that some people don't ever get exposed to. They don't get challenged at all. They stay really, really safe. And man, there's no growth in safety all the time. So I applaud anyone that steps on the line.
Yeah, great stuff. Looking forward to crossing paths. But thank you so much for joining me on the Go Earn It podcast. Thank you.
Yep. Appreciate it.